The Crying Boy is not one painting. It is a series of over 65 prints produced by an Italian painter named Bruno Amadio, who worked under the name Giovanni Bragolin. He painted them in Spain in the 1950s, variations on the same image, a young boy with enormous dark eyes, and a single tear rolling down his cheek, his expression carrying a grief too heavy for any child's face. The prints were mass-produced and sold across Europe and America throughout the 1960s and 1970s. At their peak, over 50,000 copies hung in homes across Britain alone. They were cheap. They were popular. Nobody thought twice about them. Then the fires started. The fires, the reports began quietly in the early 1980s. Firefighters in northern England started comparing notes. In house fire after house fire, the same thing kept happening. The house would be destroyed, everything inside reduced to ash, and sitting in the rubble, completely undamaged, not even warm, would be a Crying Boy print. Always the same painting, always untouched, always staring up from the destruction with those enormous, sorrowful eyes, as if nothing had happened. The firefighters mentioned it to each other, at first half jokingly, the way people mention things that make them uncomfortable. But the cases kept accumulating, and in September 1985, the Sun newspaper ran a front-page story under the headline, "The Curse of the Crying Boy." Within days, hundreds of letters poured in from across the country. Families who had lost their homes to fire and found the painting in the ruins. Families who had experienced years of bad luck after hanging it on their wall. Families who had been given it as a gift and refused to keep it. The stories were all the same. The painting survived. Everything else did not. The boy in the portrait, the Crying Boy, was not an invented figure. He was real. His name, according to the most persistent account, was Don Danilo. He was a Spanish orphan, a street child in Madrid in the early 1950s, whose parents had both died in a fire. He had watched his home burn. He had been left completely alone in the world by flame, and the people who knew him considered him cursed. Wherever he went, things burned. Locals refused to take him in. Buildings near him caught fire. He was a child surrounded by destruction that he did not cause and could not control and could not escape. Bruno Amadio found him, saw in his face that extraordinary expression of grief, and painted him, captured him, put him on canvas and sold him to the world. And then, the story goes, something happened between them, an argument, an abandonment. The boy disappeared back into the streets. He was found dead shortly afterward. His body was discovered in a burned building. He had died as his parents had died in fire. And after that, wherever his image appeared, the fire followed. When fire investigators examined the phenomenon, they found a partial explanation. The hanging string was designed to burn through quickly, causing the painting to fall face down, partially protecting it from the flames. It was a reasonable theory. It explained some of the cases. But the firefighters pushed back, because what they had seen was not paintings that had fallen face down and been protected by varnish. What they had seen were paintings hanging on walls in rooms that had reached temperatures of 800 degrees Celsius. Rooms where the wallpaper had burned away, where the walls themselves had blackened and cracked, where aluminum had melted, and the painting hanging there, undamaged, face up, watching. Flame-retardant varnish does not survive 800 degrees. Nothing survives 800 degrees. The science explained the easy cases. It did not explain the ones that mattered. In late 1985, the Sun newspaper organized a mass burning. They invited readers to send their crying boy prints to the newspaper offices to be publicly destroyed. Thousands arrived. Some were mailed. Some were hand-delivered by families who drove for hours to be rid of them. Letters came with the paintings describing years of misfortune, fires, accidents, deaths, illness, all beginning after the painting arrived in the home. On a cold morning in November 1985, the collected prints were burned in a bonfire in a car park outside the Sun-S offices. And here is a detail that everyone who was there remembered. Some of them appeared to curl away from the flames rather than into them. It took far longer than it should have. And the people who watched said it felt less like burning paintings and more like burning something that did not want to be burned. The burning did not destroy all the prints. There were millions of them across the world, and the cases continued. In New Mexico in 1987, a family lost their home to fire and found their crying boy print sitting undamaged in the ruins. The fire investigator noted the survival of the print in his official report and offered no explanation. In Brazil, in the early 1990s, a woman reported 3 separate fires in her home over 3 years, each one beginning in a different room while the painting hung untouched in the hallway. She threw it into the street. Her neighbor picked it up. Her neighbor's kitchen caught fire 2 weeks later. The painting survived. In Argentina, in 1992, a collector who owned 17 different versions of the print lost his home in a fire. All 17 prints survived, every single one. He told a journalist afterward that the paintings had looked at him through the smoke while his house burned. He said their expressions had not changed. He said they had not looked afraid. The painter's secret. Bruno Amadio died in the United States in 1981, 4 years before the British investigation brought the story to national attention. He never publicly discussed the Crying Boy series. He kept no copies of the prints in his own home. People who knew him in his final years said that when anyone asked about the paintings, he changed the subject immediately, with a speed that suggested not indifference but its opposite. His own studio burned down twice during his lifetime. Both fires were ruled accidental. He rebuilt both times. He never explained why he kept no copies of his most famous work. He never explained what had happened to Don Bonillo. He took whatever he knew with him when he died. And the prints remained, millions of them, still out there. Still watching, still surviving fires that destroy everything around them. The Crying Boy prints have never gone away. They are in attics and storage units and charity shops, and the homes of people who bought them without knowing the story, drawn to something in the boy's expression they could not quite name. That quality of sorrow too large for a child's face, that single tear, those eyes that follow you across the room. Technically, the eyes following you is an artistic illusion. A portrait painted looking directly forward will always appear to track the viewer. Technically, there is nothing unusual about it. But if you ever find yourself standing in front of a Crying Boy print in a charity shop or an antique market or the home of someone who does not know what they have hanging on their wall, look at those eyes. Look at what is in them. And ask yourself whether what you are seeing is paint, or whether something is still in there, still grieving, still watching, still waiting for the next fire.